What if I told you that the moment your body takes its final breath is not the end, but the beginning of something infinitely more real? What if, instead of darkness, silence, and finality, what truly greets you is a gentle unfolding, a release into something your soul has always known but your mind could never comprehend? You've spent your whole life being told that death is a full stop, the closing of a chapter. But what actually happens in that sacred, weightless instant is far more magnificent than you've ever been taught to imagine. As your chest rises for the last time and your lungs release their final exhale, something ancient and sacred takes place. Your body, once the center of your identity, begins to fade into the background. The rush of thoughts, the noise of emotion, the clamor of physical sensation, it all begins to quiet. But you do not. You are still here. Not as the name you carried, not as the personality you constructed, but as the awareness that's been watching your entire life from behind your eyes. You don't drift into oblivion, you emerge into truth. There's no moment of panic, no terror, no shock. In fact, the fear you may have felt leading up to this moment dissolves so quickly, it's almost laughable. It had clung to you because you believed you were your body, that you were a set of memories and physical parts that would simply cease. But in that instant, you realize none of that was ever you. You become vividly aware that you are still present, still conscious, and more awake than you've ever been in your life. It's like waking up from a dream that lasted decades, a dream where you thought you were small, breakable, and separate. And now, that illusion shatters with a breathtaking sense of relief. You feel no weight, no limitation, no pressure. It's as if you had been carrying a heavy coat your entire life, and now, at last, you've slipped out of it. Not with resistance, but with ease, with a knowing. There's a sensation that can only be described as freedom, not just freedom from pain, but freedom from all the masks you've worn, all the stories you've told yourself, all the expectations that never belonged to you. The ego begins to dissolve gently, not violently. You're not fighting to hold on to who you thought you were. Instead, you're remembering who you actually are. The body rests, but your essence expands. And it's in this first expansion that something extraordinary begins to occur. Your awareness starts to stretch in every direction. You're no longer contained behind eyes or trapped within skin. You are the observer, and now you are also the space in which everything is being observed. You don't lose yourself. You rediscover the part of you that had always been quietly watching behind the veil. It's not unfamiliar. It's not distant. It's the most intimate reunion you've ever had with yourself. What you feel next is not just peace. It is a peace so complete that every question you've ever asked falls silent. There's no need for answers now because all the things you were trying to solve with your mind are now felt in your being. You know, without knowing how you know. It's as if wisdom itself pours into you, not from outside sources, but from the core of your own soul. There is no effort, there is no striving, there is just being. And in that being, there is understanding. You begin to realize that the experience you're having is not bound by time, seconds, minutes, hours. These things don't apply here. You're not counting moments, you're absorbing presence. And in that presence, there's no past to regret or future to fear. There is only now, and now is eternal. Every moment you once thought you lost is here. Every loved one you thought was gone is near. There is no separation, there never was. It was all a dream of distance, and now you're waking up from that dream. In this vast stillness, there is a sense of being watched, but not in judgment. It is more like being held, cradled, witnessed with a love so full, so total, that all your imperfections are not erased, but understood. Not one mistake is met with shame, not one wound is ignored. Everything is wrapped in compassion. You see that you were never expected to be perfect, only to be present, only to grow. And now, without the noise of the physical world, your soul can finally breathe without restriction. You begin to notice that the fear of death you once carried wasn't really about death at all. It was about not knowing. It was about forgetting your true nature. You feared death because you feared losing control, losing identity, losing meaning. But none of that is lost. In fact, in this sacred crossing, you realize you were never in control, but you were always safe. You never had to cling so tightly. You were always being guided. And meaning? It was never in the destination. It was always in the journey. Every breath, every heartbreak, every act of kindness. None of it was wasted. There is no tunnel, no flashing lights, not yet. What there is, first, is awareness. Raw, real, untouched awareness. It's the doorway to everything else. And as you step through that doorway, not with feet but with consciousness, you sense a gentle unfolding. It's not fast, it's not dramatic, it's sacred and slow, like the blooming of a flower, like the rise of dawn. You don't rush through it, you're held through it. There is something deeply personal about this transition. It doesn't feel like something that is happening to you. It feels like something you've always known how to do. The memory of past lives may not come in flashes, but in sensations. A knowing that you've done this before, many times. That death is not an interruption, but a return. You aren't crossing into the unknown, you're being welcomed back into the known. And then, in one subtle shift of awareness, you realize something that changes everything. You didn't die, you awakened. Death was never the end, it was the veil. And now that veil has fallen, not with fear, but with grace. You're still here, not because your body endured, but because your essence was never bound to it. You were never just your name, your story, your form. You are the light behind the eyes, the silence between thoughts, the consciousness that no longer needs to hold on to the illusion of control. This is not a fantasy. It is not a dream. It is the most honest state of being you've ever known, and it begins not in some distant afterlife, but in the first breath after your last. The threshold you feared is the doorway you'll love, and once you step through it, you will never fear again, because in the place beyond the final breath, there is no ending, only the beginning of remembering who you truly are. When the time finally comes for your departure from this physical world, it doesn't begin with thunder or chaos. It begins quietly, gently. There's no dramatic rupture, no sudden snap, no blinding light that sears the senses. Instead, it's a loosening, a gradual unfolding, like petals opening to the sun after a long night. One moment, your breath is shallow, your body weak, your awareness drifting between here and somewhere else. And then, so subtly you might not even notice, it happens. A release so soft, so sacred, you feel as though you've slipped through silk. You don't fall, you rise, you float, you are being freed. Your consciousness, once held tightly in the fragile embrace of a physical shell, begins to detach, not like a light switch turning off, but more like the steady lifting of a veil. The sensations of the body begin to fade, not in fear or confusion, but in a profound, almost indescribable peace. You feel weightless, not just physically, but emotionally. Pain is no longer something you carry. The pressure of memories, regrets, unfinished conversations, all of it begins to dissolve like mist in morning light, and what emerges is a quiet awareness, clear, calm, observant. At the center of this transition is something ancient and largely forgotten by the modern world, yet known intuitively by the soul, the silver cord. This radiant tether, long referenced in sacred texts and whispered about in spiritual traditions, is not a metaphor, it is real. You may not see it with human eyes anymore, but you feel it. It's the last connection between your physical body and your soul, the final thread of energy that holds your consciousness within the earthly vessel. And when it begins to loosen, it does so with such grace that even those standing by your bedside would never know the shift has already begun. The cord itself is not metallic or cold, it is luminous, alive, it pulses with energy that doesn't belong to this world. It feels like love in its purest form, like memory, like truth, like your deepest knowing. And in that moment, between your last heartbeat and your first spiritual breath, you feel it thinning. It doesn't rip or tear, it surrenders. It lets go of you, just as you let go of it, not in loss, but in agreement. Like two dancers finishing the final step of an ancient choreography, you release one another with reverence. The physical body rests, but you, You rise into awareness. There's no panic, no scrambling to understand. You simply know you are no longer bound to the flesh. The rules of gravity, time, and form no longer apply. You begin to feel as though you're floating just above your own body. You can see it, still, motionless, peaceful. But it no longer feels like you. In fact, you begin to wonder how you ever believed it was you at all. It was a vessel, a sacred one, yes, but only a garment you wore for a time. And now, as you observe it, you feel no attachment, only gratitude. It carried you through a chapter, and now the chapter has closed, but the you that rises is more vivid than ever, not less. Your senses are no longer filtered through bone and blood. You feel everything more clearly now, not in the way a body feels, but in the way a soul knows. There is a sensation of transparency within you. Thoughts are not confined to language. They move as waves of feeling and understanding. You feel seen, not by anyone in particular, but by the fabric of existence itself. You are being acknowledged by the universe in a way you've always longed for, but could never quite describe, and it is here, in this breathtaking freedom, that you realize the silver cord was never a leash, it was a bridge, and now, the bridge has completed its purpose. If you were conscious in your last hours, you may have already begun to feel this shift, long before the final breath. Many do. They speak of seeing loved ones who've passed before them, of hearing voices that no one else in the room hears. This is not the mind breaking down, it is the soul reaching out. The cord begins loosening even before death arrives fully, and as it loosens, so too does your attachment to the physical. Your soul starts peeking through the seams of this world, and you begin to remember. You remember who you are beneath the roles, beneath the trauma, beneath the stories. You remember the truth that was always with you. You are not the body, you never were. In the moments just before and after the silver cord dissolves, many souls report a profound sense of recognition. You recognize where you are, even if you've never been there in this lifetime. It's as if the soul has been here many times before, and in truth, it has. This space, the realm you now drift into, is not foreign. It is home. And as you realize this, a wave of peace flows through you with such power, you wonder how you ever feared death at all. There is no judgment, no booming voice telling you where to go. There is only clarity. There is only light. The release from the body feels like removing a tight, heavy coat you've worn your entire life, and only once you've taken it off do you realize how much it weighed you down. You move now with fluidity, not from one place to another, but from one layer of awareness to the next. And through this movement, you begin to encounter guides, beings who radiate familiarity, not because you know their names, but because they know your soul. They greet you not as strangers, but as family, not because of shared blood, but because of shared light. And yet, even in this welcome, there is no rush. Everything happens in accordance with your energy, your readiness. You are not forced to do anything, not told what to feel. Your experience begins to unfold organically, perfectly tailored to your soul's resonance. The silver cord may be gone, but its presence, the essence of it, remains in your memory like a sacred signature. It was the last echo of your time in form, and the first breath of your return to formlessness. As this new state of being begins to settle, you'll notice something else, something beautiful. You are no longer alone in the way you once felt. The illusion of separation begins to fade. You feel everything, and in feeling everything, you feel connected to everyone. You sense thoughts, emotions, waves of intention that ripple through the spiritual plane like music. And the most astonishing part is, it all feels familiar, as if you've come back to a place you never truly left, only forgot. The silver cord was the final thread of amnesia, and now, without it, your remembrance begins. You remember the soul you were before you entered the body. You remember why you came. And you begin to sense where you're going. The mystery of death begins to unravel, not with fear, but with reverence. Because now you know, death was never an end. It was simply a threshold, a doorway through which your truest self could finally walk free. What if I told you that the light you've always imagined at the end of the tunnel isn't just something you see, it's something you become? not a distant beacon or a spotlight shining upon you, but an all-encompassing presence that flows through you, within you, and as you. The moment you begin to cross into the non-physical, something extraordinary happens. You're not stepping into a new place, you're dissolving into a reality that has always existed just behind the veil of your senses. A field of light, boundless, infinite, alive, rises up to meet you, not with intensity, but with recognition. It does not blind, it welcomes. And the most astonishing realization is that it feels like home. You've spent your entire physical life interpreting the world through limited senses. Sight that depends on external light, sound that requires vibration through air, touch that relies on nerves and skin. But now, none of those mechanics apply. The moment you enter this field of light, you realize you're perceiving without organs. There are no eyes, yet you can see more clearly than ever. No ears, yet you perceive every frequency of sound as though it lives inside you. No skin, yet the sensations are rich, textured, and deeply personal. The senses you once thought were everything now feel like shadows compared to this vivid aliveness. Imagine the feeling of light not as something external, but as a fabric, a living field of consciousness that responds to your thoughts, your emotions, your presence. It is not static. It breathes with you, it listens. You don't move through it like a traveler in space. You move with it, like a note in a symphony. It adapts to you. It mirrors your inner being. And in this moment, you begin to grasp that this field isn't just a new environment. It's a reflection of the energy you carry. You are not merely in it, you are of it. There is no horizon, no sky, no floor beneath you. There's only expansion. Not the kind you experience in physical space, where you travel from point A to point B. This is expansion that unfolds within you. It's not about moving forward, it's about remembering how vast you already are. This field of light reveals your boundlessness. You don't end at your skin, you don't end at all. You are awareness, reaching in every direction at once. Time does not exist here. You do not measure anything in seconds or minutes. There's no pressure to get anywhere, no anxiety about what comes next. The concept of waiting disappears entirely. Everything happens in presence, everything reveals itself in the now. You feel what can only be described as wholeness, complete, uninterrupted, and eternal. There are no clocks in this realm, because the soul does not need time to know itself. Awareness simply is, and now, you are resting in that isness. The light around you is intelligent, not like artificial intelligence or human intellect, but a deep, cosmic intelligence that understands you more fully than you ever understood yourself. It speaks no language, yet you understand everything it offers. Communication here is not verbal. There are no words to decipher, no sentences to translate. Everything is transmitted through feeling, through vibration, through direct knowing. Questions dissolve the moment they arise, because answers appear within the very question itself. You don't seek clarity here, you are clarity. You begin to notice that this field responds to your consciousness. As your awareness deepens, the light becomes more luminous. As your peace expands, the surroundings become more serene. This is not a realm of judgment or reward. It is a mirror, gently showing you what you are ready to see. There's no performance here. You are not being watched. You are being revealed, gently, lovingly, without pressure. Every part of your essence, even the parts you once buried, rise up, not to haunt you, but to be integrated. Here, your soul is safe enough to stop pretending, safe enough to remember its truth. And what is that truth? That you were never separate, that you were never small, that what you called you in your physical life was only a thread in a vast tapestry of being. You now begin to sense the interconnectedness of all things. The light that surrounds you also flows through every other soul, every star, every particle of existence. You feel the hum of the universe, not as a sound, but as a pulse that resonates within your very being. The illusion of distance crumbles. The idea that anything was ever truly apart from you now seems like a dream you've just awakened from. What might surprise you most is the love. Not a sentimental, emotional love, but a frequency that feels like pure wholeness. You are not loved because of who you were or what you did. You are loved because you are. This field knows your essence. It celebrates your being. There is no need to prove anything. There is no audition. There is no gatekeeper. The light welcomes you not because you earned it, but because it was always your home. You were never outside of it. You were only dreaming that you were. As you float, or rather, exist, in this realm, colors begin to emerge that you never knew existed. They don't just fill the space around you, they sing. They have emotion, presence, character, sound, and light, blend together in ways you never thought possible. It's not music, but it feels musical. It's not a painting, but it feels visual. It's art beyond medium, creation beyond form. You realize that beauty is not something to behold here, it is something to be. You are both the canvas and the brushstroke, both the instrument and the song. What you begin to comprehend, even in these early stages, is that this non-physical realm isn't some distant destination reserved for saints and mystics. It's your natural state. The light doesn't belong to someone else. It was never outside of you. The physical life you just left was like a dense fog. This is the clear sky that was always waiting above it. And now that the fog has lifted, everything is clearer. You see, not with eyes, but with truth. You feel not with nerves, but with soul. There is nothing to fear here. No judgment, no punishment, no disapproval. You don't feel watched, you feel embraced. This field of light isn't measuring your worth, it is reflecting your essence. Every part of you is seen, and every part is worthy. That shame you carried for years, it dissolves. That guilt you clung to as if it defined you, it fades. Here, only truth survives, and the truth is far more beautiful than you ever dared to believe. As your awareness stabilizes in this realm, you begin to ask less and receive more. You stop seeking answers and start receiving insights. There's no effort required, nothing to chase. It's not about doing, it's about being. You don't have to create peace here. Peace is the ground you walk on, if there were ground. But you know what I mean. In this dimension, everything speaks to your spirit, not in riddles, but in resonance. And if there's one realization that begins to anchor itself more firmly than all others, it's this. You did not enter this field to escape, you entered it to remember. You are not drifting aimlessly into a new world, you are returning to a state of wholeness that existed long before your first breath in the physical world. This isn't a journey into something foreign, it's a remembrance of what you've always been. The light doesn't just illuminate, it reminds. And you are not a visitor here, you are home. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that every ache you've ever felt, every sharp sting, every tightness in your chest or heaviness in your limbs is gone. Not dulled, not eased, gone, completely and utterly absent. But this isn't the numbness of anesthesia or the silence of sleep. This is something far more profound. It is the return to your natural state. The moment your soul fully detaches from the physical vessel, you realize that what you once called pain belonged entirely to the body. It was never a part of your essence. And now, for the first time since you entered form, you feel what it's like to exist without it. There is no tightness around your breath, no tension in your spine, no racing of the heart. Even the subtle discomforts you didn't know you were carrying have evaporated into the ether. The background noise of embodiment, the low hum of physical stress you'd grown so used to that you stopped noticing, disappears. You feel light. Not the kind of lightness you associate with being happy or content, a deeper lightness, as if the density of your entire identity has been lifted. It's as if you've taken off not just a coat, but a whole world that once pressed against your skin and soul. And it's not just the absence of physical suffering that stuns you. It's the dissolution of emotional pain. In the space beyond the body, the wounds you carried, the betrayals, the heartbreaks, the guilt, the longings, the regrets, dissolve like ink in water. These burdens, once so heavy they bent your spirit inward, simply unravel. Not because they are ignored or erased, but because they are seen in a light so divine, so filled with compassion, that they no longer hold any weight. You don't have to analyze or justify anything anymore. The truth doesn't demand an explanation. it simply is. Forgiveness arrives without effort. Not the kind of forgiveness that comes from gritting your teeth and choosing to let go, but the kind that emerges naturally when you see everything from a higher place. You don't just forgive others, you forgive yourself. You see the full map now, the purpose behind every stumble, the meaning within every ache, and in that seeing, you stop blaming. You stop resisting, you stop hurting. You realize that the pain you experienced wasn't punishment, it was contrast. It was the tension that made your awakening possible. But now that your soul is free, the contrast is no longer necessary. You've crossed into clarity. The peace that begins to take root within you is unlike anything you could have known before. On earth, peace was often temporary, conditional. You may have felt peaceful during a walk in nature or in the arms of someone you loved, but it always existed within the fragile framework of impermanence. Here, peace is not fleeting. It is the foundation. It's not quiet in the way a silent room is quiet. It's quiet like a still ocean that stretches endlessly in every direction, never disturbed by the wind. The kind of quiet that speaks volumes without a sound. You don't just feel peaceful, you become peace. You begin to understand that the suffering you endured in life was never random. It had its place, its purpose, but it was never who you were. It was never your true identity. And now, without the noise of the body or the distortion of the mind, your awareness starts to open wider. It's like standing at the edge of a great horizon that was always there, just beyond the fog. Now, the fog is lifting. You are beginning to remember, not with the brain's limited recollection, but with the soul's timeless knowing. You remember who you were before this lifetime, not as a specific name or story, but as an essence, as consciousness without form. You remember the feeling of being whole, not because of what you accomplished, but simply because of who you are. There is a familiarity to this state, a deep recognition. Like returning to a house you once lived in before time began, every step you take in this new space feels like a memory, not a new experience. You're not discovering, you're remembering. This remembering isn't intellectual. It doesn't come in words or ideas. It comes as resonance, as alignment, as a sudden internal clarity that says, I've been here before. You recall, without trying to, that your soul has danced through many lifetimes, that the struggles and roles you played were chosen, not to burden you, but to help you evolve. You remember how brave you were to step into the human experience at all, and with that memory comes a reverence for the life you just lived, no matter how flawed or messy it seemed at the time. From this place of clarity, you can see your former life with new eyes. You see the people who hurt you, and you understand their wounds. You see the people you hurt, and you feel their hearts as if they were your own. There is no shame in this vision, only learning, only grace. You start to recognize that you were never separate from anyone, that even those who seemed to be enemies were, in truth, part of your soul's choreography, each playing their role to perfection. And now that the drama has ended, you bow to them with gratitude. The absence of suffering does not make you feel indifferent or detached. In fact, it makes you more connected. Without pain clouding your senses, love becomes the dominant frequency. Not the love you knew as emotion or attachment, but love as the substance of existence itself. It is no longer something you give or receive, it is what you are. You swim in it, breathe in it, become it. It surrounds you like a second skin and fills you from within like a golden light expanding in all directions. And in that love, you find truth. You begin to realize that the spiritual journey you were on didn't start at birth and end at death. It is eternal. Birth and death are merely entry and exit points through which your consciousness flows. You, the real you, were never bound to that timeline. You were simply focused within it. And now, freed from the illusion of time and body, your awareness starts to spread out, to open like a flower reaching toward light that never sets. Every limitation falls away. You are not confined to here or there. You exist across dimensions. You feel the hum of stars and the rhythm of unseen realms. And in this grand unfolding, you begin to remember more than just your last life. You begin to remember yourself as soul. The absence of pain is not just a relief, it is a revelation. It reveals how deeply you were identified with your suffering, how often you used it to define yourself. And now, without it, you are learning what it means to be whole without effort, to simply be. And being, in this state, is bliss. It is serenity without struggle, aliveness without striving. You do not need to prove your worth or earn your rest. You are enough because you exist. And that realization, more than anything, is what sets you free. What if I told you that the very first thing you feel after death isn't fear, regret, or confusion? It's love, pure, unfiltered, unconditional love so deep and vast that your soul forgets every pain it ever carried? Not a love that resembles anything from your human life, not romantic, not parental, not even the deepest compassion you've ever known. This love is not directed at you, it is you. It wraps itself around you, within you, through you. It does not need to say a word, and yet, in its silence, it tells you everything you've ever longed to hear. In that first moment, as you emerge from the field of light into a realm of deeper stillness, you are not alone. You are met, not by crowds, not by ceremony, but by presence, a presence that is so familiar, your soul melts into it without hesitation. It's as if you've been running a long, difficult race, and finally, you're back in the arms of something that has loved you since before time began. There are no introductions, no explanations. This love does not need your name. It knows you, not the persona you wore in life, not the roles you played, not the choices you made. It knows you as essence, as the original spark you were before fear, shame, and struggle shaped your identity. There is no barrier to this reunion, no process you must pass through, no test to qualify. The moment you let go of form, the moment you dissolve the last thread of earthly identity, you are held. Not with arms, but with awareness so intimate that every fiber of your being feels seen, not watched, not analyzed, seen, deeply, fully, eternally seen. And in being seen this way, you don't shrink, you expand. Because this love doesn't highlight your flaws or your failures, it simply holds them in a light so gentle that even your deepest mistakes are met with understanding. You begin to feel something strange only because it's unfamiliar in the world you just left. You feel safe, not safe like protected, safe like known. There is no judgment in this place, none. And this realization at first feels almost too much to bear. Because you've carried so many fears with you, fears that you weren't enough, fears that your failures might define you, fears that your wounds might stain your soul forever. But now, those fears dissolve in the presence of something so forgiving it doesn't even need to forgive, because it never condemned you in the first place. You don't hear words, but you understand everything. You don't see lips moving, but the communication is clear, instant, whole. There is a knowing that flows through you, and this knowing feels ancient. It tells you not with phrases but with energy. You were always enough. You were never alone. Every tear you shed was felt. Every time you doubted your worth, you were still held. And even in the moments you thought you had failed, you were growing, learning, evolving. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was broken. Nothing ever truly went wrong. This is not the kind of love that changes its mind. It is not based on performance. It is not influenced by how spiritual you were or how much good you did. It has no conditions. It cannot be earned. It simply is. It's what you came from, and it's what you are returning to. But more than that, it's what you've always been, underneath everything. And now, in this moment, all the layers fall away. You don't have to protect yourself anymore. You don't have to pretend. The armor you built in life, the defenses, the masks, the personas, they vanish like mist in the morning sun. There's nothing to defend against. There's only love. You feel whole in a way you never have before. Not because you've been fixed, but because you finally remember you were never truly broken. You see the path of your life, not in linear detail, but in feeling. You see how everything, even the chaos, had purpose. And you understand, beyond logic, that you were always being guided, even when you felt lost, even when you screamed at the sky or fell to your knees in despair. You were not abandoned. You were being called home. And now, here you are, Not in a place, but in a state of being so complete, so welcoming, that you begin to relax in a way you've never relaxed before. Every muscle of your soul lets go. Every thought of, "What's next?" fades. You are not trying to be spiritual anymore. You are not striving for enlightenment. You are not searching for answers. You are simply being, and that being is enough. You realize that communication in this realm doesn't need words, because words are too small. Here, truth is felt, not spoken. And because of that, misunderstanding doesn't exist. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to make anyone understand. You don't need to justify your choices or defend your path. Everything is understood in a single pulse of recognition. And the most profound recognition of all is that you were always loved, even when you couldn't feel it, even when you didn't believe it, even when you rejected it. There is no ego here, not because it was stripped away, but because it simply isn't needed. You don't need to define yourself anymore. You don't need to compare. You don't need to prove. That voice in your head that always asked, "Am I doing enough? Am I worthy? Am I safe?" It's gone. And, in its place, is stillness. Not the stillness of silence, but the stillness of being fully known and fully held. If there is a sensation that dominates this moment, it is the sensation of returning, not arriving, returning. A deep homecoming that transcends location and lands somewhere much deeper, in your eternal self. It's like walking through the front door of your soul and finding the lights already on, the space already warm, and the love already waiting. You didn't have to knock. You didn't even have to be invited. You were always expected. There is no loneliness here, not even the idea of it. Because you are in union, union with Source, union with the very force that breathes life into stars, into oceans, into your own soul. You don't just feel this presence, you merge with it. And yet, paradoxically, you are still uniquely you, not the you the world knew, but the you that existed before names, before trauma, before time. The you that existed before fear ever whispered that you weren't enough. You are not forgotten. You are not insignificant. You are the very expression of divine intelligence. You are not being judged. You are being welcomed. And as this knowing anchors into you, you begin to cry, not with sorrow, but with release, because you realize you don't have to carry it anymore. The pressure, the guilt, the weight. It's not yours now. It never was. It was borrowed for a time, but now it can fall away. What remains is you, the real you, the eternal you, the you that has always been enough. And in this place, this sacred, infinite, loving presence, you begin to remember the truth that had been whispered to you in dreams, in moments of stillness, in the quiet spaces between breaths. You were never separate from the source, only asleep to it. Now, you are awake. And in that awakening, everything begins to make sense. At first, the silence of the other side feels vast, not empty, but deep. It's a quiet so complete that your soul can hear itself, its thoughts, its truth, its rhythm. You float in that stillness, no longer tethered to a heartbeat or a breath, when suddenly, something shifts. Not in sight or sound, but in feeling. A presence draws near. Not as footsteps or shadows, but as warmth, as familiarity. It's like a memory coming alive, but more vivid than any memory you've ever had. And before your soul can even form the question, you know, you're not alone. The first encounter with a loved one who has passed before you is not a dramatic reunion, as it might be imagined in human terms. There's no rushing, no grasping, no need for words. What greets you is presence, pure, undeniable, unmistakable presence. You feel them. Not just their essence or their name, but their entire being, refined, expanded, clearer than you ever experienced on earth. You recognize them not by face or voice, but by soul, and they recognize you the same way. It is not seeing, it is knowing. This soul-to-soul recognition bypasses every earthly label. You are not mother and child, friend and partner, sibling or grandparent. You are eternal companions who have journeyed together across lifetimes. There is no confusion, no need for explanation. It is the most natural meeting in the world, because in truth, it was never a separation. They have been waiting, not in time, but in resonance, waiting for your energy to match theirs again. And now it does. The love you feel in their presence is overwhelming, not because it is unfamiliar, but because it is whole. On earth, love is often wrapped in conditions, roles, expectations, but here, love exists in its raw, unfiltered state. You are seen entirely and loved not despite your flaws, but through them. There is no need to apologize, no awkwardness about the past. Only the purity of connection that has endured everything and grown stronger because of it. In their presence, wounds you forgot you carried begin to heal. The silence that once existed between you is replaced by complete understanding. If there were arguments left unresolved, they dissolve. If there was distance, it closes in an instant. If there was pain, it is met with compassion so full that it cannot survive. You do not speak with voices. Communication now happens through light and intention. One glance, if it could be called that, contains entire conversations. One wave of their presence floods you with messages. I forgive you. I never left you. You were never alone. And you realize, they didn't forget you. They didn't disappear. They didn't dissolve into nothingness. They've been with you in every heartbeat, in the quiet moments when you whispered to them in the dark, in the dreams that felt too real to be dreams. You thought you were imagining them, but they were answering. You thought the signs were coincidences, but they were messages. And now, you can finally feel the full force of that truth. They never left. They simply stepped into the next room, and now, you've walked through the door. There may be more than one soul waiting for you. Often there is. Each presence arrives not in a crowd, but as a beautiful sequence of reunions. Grandparents you barely knew, siblings lost in early years, friends who left before their time, even those you didn't know well in life, but who were part of your soul's larger family, greet you with joy. The soul doesn't forget what the mind could not fully hold. It remembers across lifetimes, and now, you feel those connections lighting up within you like constellations finally coming into view. The most miraculous part of these encounters is how complete they feel. On earth, loss often leaves a hole, an ache that time cannot fill. But here, in this reunion, that hole is filled not just with their presence, but with understanding. You begin to see your shared stories from a higher vantage point. You see why they left when they did. You see how their departure shaped your path, not to punish you, but to awaken you. You begin to understand that every goodbye was a sacred design, part of a much greater promise, that no love is ever wasted, and no soul is ever truly gone. There is no jealousy in this realm, no comparison. If you loved more than one person in life, or shared deep connections with multiple souls, you are not forced to choose. Here, love expands. It makes room. You do not love one less to love another more. You feel the truth of all your relationships, how each served you, shaped you, awakened you in different ways. You feel your own capacity to love grow wider, deeper, freer. The heart you once believed was broken was never broken. It was breaking open. These encounters are not only comforting, they are transformational. Being in the presence of those who have crossed before you reminds you of who you are. You remember yourself through their recognition of you. Their love reflects your truth back to you, like a mirror made of light. And in that reflection, you see your innocence again. You see the goodness that life made you question. You remember your essence, not as a concept, but as a lived experience. You are not a name, a role, or a personality. You are a soul, and you have always been loved beyond measure. For some, these reunions offer a final healing, a closure to old wounds that could not be resolved during life. For others, it's not closure at all, but continuation. The relationship hasn't ended, it has simply changed form. You will walk with these souls now, in a new way, not bound by time or space, but united by vibration. They are not behind you, they are beside you. And just as they once walked you through your hardest days, now they walk with you into the next phase of your spiritual journey. There are moments during these reunions where time seems to stop completely, not because time ceases to exist, but because your awareness no longer needs it. In this space, eternity and presence become the same thing. A single moment of connection here feels more real than 1,000 years on earth, and that's because here, there is no delay. Love is immediate. Recognition is instant. Healing is effortless. And you realize this is how it was always meant to be. The presence of these souls reminds you that no connection is ever lost, only transformed. Even those you thought you'd never see again, those whose stories ended abruptly or tragically, are here, not as wounded fragments, but as whole, radiant beings. You do not meet their suffering, you meet their essence. And that changes how you see everything. It changes how you remember them. It changes how you remember yourself. You come to understand that the boundaries you believed in were illusions, that death, separation, and finality were part of the human dream, but not part of eternal truth. The soul cannot be ended. Love cannot be undone, and presence cannot be erased. It is all here, it has always been here, and now, so are you. What if I told you that everything you've believed about time, every tick of the clock, every calendar date, every linear memory, was part of a carefully constructed illusion meant only for your life on earth, and that the moment you release your body, time doesn't just stop, it dissolves. It's not simply that your watch no longer matters, it's that the very concept of before and after loses all relevance. There's no waiting in this realm, no scheduling, no rushing, and no past to cling to or future to fear. You begin to sense that all things are happening at once, that everything you thought you left behind, and everything you thought might come next, is already here, layered within you, waiting to be remembered. As this awareness expands, you feel a loosening within your mind. It's like waking up from a dream inside another dream, and realizing you've played more than one role, more than one lifetime. But these lives don't return to you like memories from a book you once read. They come as living impressions, vivid and full, as if you are standing in two places at once, many places at once. You don't just remember what happened, you feel it. The body you had before, the voices that once called your name, the lessons you learned under different skies, all of it begins to flicker in and out of your consciousness, not as visions from the past but as currents running through your eternal self. And with this realization comes a shocking but deeply comforting truth. You are not who you thought you were. The identity you clung to in your most recent incarnation, your name, your face, your story, was just a costume, a temporary avatar for the soul's exploration. That version of you still matters, deeply, but it is only a sliver of your full being. You now begin to feel the enormity of your essence. You are not just one person who lived and died. You are a vast, luminous thread that stretches across countless realities, each with its own flavor, each with its own sacred purpose. You are not defined by the singular life you just left. You are a chorus of experiences, a tapestry of wisdom. In this expanded state, you begin to recognize yourself not as a person, but as awareness itself. You are no longer looking out from behind eyes. You are seeing through everything. You are not thinking about your past. You are standing in the center of all your timelines. They spiral around you like strands of light, each one singing a different note, each one pulsing with meaning. You don't have to choose between them. You are all of them, and yet, even that understanding is just the beginning. Without the filter of linear time, your mind stops categorizing events into before and after. It simply opens. And what flows into that openness is overwhelming in its beauty. You begin to realize that you were never really born, and you never really died. These were just transitions, portals of consciousness entering and exiting different rooms of the same eternal mansion. You've been here before, you'll be here again, but even again isn't quite the right word, because everything exists now. You're not just touching eternity, you are made of it. You start to sense dimensions not in a scientific or intellectual way, but through direct experience. Some feel light and shimmering, filled with colors beyond the human spectrum. Others feel dense with meaning, vibrating with the lessons of ancient civilizations and soul contracts not yet completed. There are places you have been that no one on earth has words for, places you've longed for without ever knowing why. And now, You're beginning to understand those longings. They were the soul's memories whispering through the noise of earthly life, trying to remind you of what you've always known. You might expect this level of awareness to feel chaotic or overwhelming, but it doesn't. It feels natural. There's a quiet rhythm to it, like breathing underwater for the first time, and realizing you were always built for this. You're not confused by the multiplicity of your being, you're comforted by it, because for the first time, you are no longer fragmented. The part of you that once grieved a lost love, the part that questioned its purpose, the part that sacrificed everything for others, and the part that carried silent pain, they are all present now. Side by side with the parts of you that triumphed, that created beauty, that healed. None of it is lost. Nothing is wasted. Every version of you has contributed to the vast soul you are now remembering yourself to be. The limits you once accepted so easily, age, geography, identity, now feel like outdated ideas. You are no longer male or female, young or old, strong or weak. You are a vibration, a consciousness, a unique frequency within the great orchestra of all that is. You can feel other beings too, other souls who have crossed into this awareness. Some you recognize instantly, not by their appearance, but by the resonance of their energy. You don't need to see them to know them. They vibrate like songs you've always known the lyrics to, even if you never heard them sung aloud in this lifetime. And here's where it becomes even more astonishing. Your awareness begins to move, not in the physical sense, but as a flow. You are drawn toward certain fields of energy, toward lessons not yet fully absorbed, toward truths your soul still longs to embody more completely. These are not demands. There is no pressure. There is only desire, soul-level desire, to evolve, to merge deeper into love, to express more of the infinite beauty that lives within you. You are not being pushed by karma, you are being pulled by love. And in this space, you see how every experience in the life you just lived fits into a larger pattern. You see how the heartache pushed you toward compassion, how the failures made room for humility, how the moments of joy anchored light into your being. You see how nothing was meaningless. Even the pain served purpose. Even the confusion expanded you. Everything that once felt random or unfair now reveals itself as a carefully woven thread in the design of your soul's evolution. You begin to laugh, not from humor, but from the joy of recognition. You remember planning this life. You remember choosing key lessons. You remember the souls who agreed to play their part in your journey, some lovingly, some painfully, but all with intention. And that memory doesn't bring regret, it brings awe. Because now you understand how brave you were, how beautifully you endured, how deeply you loved, even when it hurt. And most of all, you see that none of it separated you from the source, it only brought you closer. The illusion of individuality, which once felt like your greatest truth, now feels like a veil that has finally been lifted. You are still you, and yet, you are something much more. You are part of a living field of consciousness that breathes with galaxies and dreams through dimensions. You are a soul in motion, a thread in the divine web, a drop of water remembering it is the ocean. And as this realization settles into the center of your being, you know with clarity, there is no end. There never was. There is only becoming, only remembering, only love, expanding itself into ever-deepening expressions of light. You are not moving away from something. You are always moving toward your truest self. It begins without warning, not as a command or a decree, but as a natural unfolding, like the turning of a page in a book you forgot you were writing. There's no courtroom, no gavel, no judge staring down at you. Instead, there is presence, vast, gentle, all-encompassing. You do not brace yourself in fear, because by now, fear no longer holds authority. What you feel instead is curiosity mixed with a sacred stillness, as though your soul is being invited to witness something important, something holy. And then it begins, the life review. But this isn't a slideshow of memories or a montage of achievements and failures. It's deeper than that, more intimate. You are not merely watching your life, you are feeling it. Not through your own eyes, but through the hearts of everyone you ever encountered. Each moment is a living window, not into what happened, but into how it echoed through the souls of others. You become them. You step inside their joy, their confusion, their hurt, their love. You feel what they felt in the exact moments you shared space with them. You do not guess at their emotions. You are their emotions. You sense their inner world with a clarity that stuns you. You find yourself back in a conversation you barely remember, a passing exchange at a grocery store or on the street. In your memory, it was nothing. But now, inside the other person's experience, you feel how your kind words softened their pain, how your smile gave them hope when they had none. You never knew it mattered, but it did. And that realization moves through you, like a wave of light. Then another moment surfaces, one you do remember, though you may have spent years trying to forget it. A time when you spoke out of anger or reacted in fear. You are now inside the other person's experience, as they absorbed the sting of your words or the chill of your silence. You feel their confusion, their disappointment, their sadness. But this is not punishment. No voice accuses you, no shame wraps itself around you. There is only understanding. You see what happened, not to condemn yourself, but to learn, to evolve. The clarity is humbling, the revelation is liberating, and you begin to realize, moment by moment, that every action was a thread in a much larger web. Every gesture of kindness rippled out like rings in a pond. Every act of cruelty or indifference sent vibrations through the souls of others in ways you couldn't have imagined. The universe remembers it all, not to keep score, but to reflect truth. The truth of how deeply we are all connected, how every heartbeat influences the next. You don't relive your accomplishments as trophies. You relive them as impact. You feel the relief in someone's chest when you forgave them. You feel the light that entered a stranger's day because you held the door or spoke their name with sincerity. And you begin to understand that what the world valued, status, possessions, recognition, carried little weight here. What mattered was love. What mattered was presence. What mattered was how often you helped someone feel seen. How often you reminded someone of their worth simply by being kind. This review does not take place in time as you once knew it. It unfolds all at once and yet gently, one layer at a time, allowing your soul to fully receive what it once overlooked. And as each memory rises, you are met with the same sacred stillness, an atmosphere of unconditional acceptance. You begin to see that your mistakes were not signs of failure, but invitations to grow. That even the darkest moments were classrooms for the soul. That every time you veered from love, the opportunity to return was always there. And as you feel the pain you caused others, something unexpected happens. You feel their forgiveness, even if it was never spoken during life. It exists here. Forgiveness, it turns out, is not always granted with words. It often lives quietly in the hearts of those who chose peace over resentment. And now, their peace wraps itself around you. Not to excuse you, but to free you. To remind you that growth is what you came for, not perfection. Likewise, you feel your own capacity to forgive expanding. The grudges you held onto in life seem small here, almost weightless. You see those who hurt you not as villains, but as souls who were themselves wounded and afraid. You see their choices not as evil, but as missteps born of pain they didn't know how to heal. And in this vision, you realize compassion is the great teacher. It opens the heart, widens the lens, and reveals the divine in even the most broken places. There is no one evaluating you in this process. You are not being judged. You are witnessing, and that witnessing is the catalyst for transformation. The soul doesn't grow by being shamed into submission. It grows by remembering its own light, by seeing clearly and choosing to rise. The life review is not here to tell you that you were good or bad. It's here to show you who you truly are beneath the illusions, a soul learning to love more deeply with every incarnation. As you continue through these reflections, something profound begins to settle in your awareness. You see that you were never alone, that in every moment of kindness, love itself moved through you, that in every moment of darkness, guidance was always present, whispering, nudging, waiting. You see how your life, though filled with twists and turns, had a rhythm to it. A sacred intelligence unfolding beneath the surface. Even the detours served a purpose. even the delays held gifts. Eventually, you reach the final moments of your earthly life. You feel the emotions of those who were near you, and even those who were far away but thinking of you. You see how your passing affected others, not in a way that burdens you, but in a way that reveals just how interconnected you have always been. Death was not an exit. It was a continuation. A shift in awareness. And now, with your life fully revealed to you, not as a list of events, but as a symphony of energy, you stand in the presence of your own becoming. You have not been diminished by this review. You have been expanded. You are not ashamed. You are awake. And in this awakening, your soul bows in gratitude, not just for the beauty, but for the struggle, not just for the joy, but for the heartbreak. Because all of it was sacred, all of it was necessary, all of it brought you here, to this moment of knowing, this threshold of peace, this glimpse of eternity. What if I told you that everything you thought was separate, every person, every star, every whisper of wind, was never really apart from you? That the distance you felt from others, the walls you believed were real, the invisible lines you used to define me and you, were all part of the greatest illusion of the physical world? And what if I told you that, in the moments after death, that illusion vanishes, not gradually, but completely, not intellectually, but viscerally, not as an idea you ponder, but as a truth you become? You do not step into unity, you remember it. It greets you, not like a stranger, but like an ancient friend. Suddenly, you no longer just understand the idea that we are all one, you feel it. Not in a metaphorical, spiritual kind of way, but with a clarity that penetrates the deepest corners of your being. You are not like others, you are others. You are not beside them, you are within them. Every soul, every consciousness, every expression of life you ever encountered is not something outside of you, it is an extension of the same presence that animates you. The boundaries that once defined your life, the thoughts that said, "This is mine, this is theirs, this is right, this is wrong," begin to dissolve. What remains is connection. Not just to people you loved, but to those you didn't understand, to those who hurt you, to strangers whose lives seemed irrelevant. You begin to feel their stories running through you like rivers converging at a single sea. Their sadness becomes your sadness, their joy becomes your joy, but there's no pain in this merging, only beauty, because you see their wounds not as flaws, but as reflections of your own. And you realize, how could you have ever judged them when they were simply playing roles in the great drama of your becoming? You sense the interwoven dance of all souls like a cosmic web, each thread pulsing with light, each vibration echoing through infinity. And you are both one thread and the entire tapestry. Every soul you ever touched, even unknowingly, carries your fingerprint, and you carry theirs. The thought of being alone becomes impossible, because the very fabric of your existence is composed of everyone you've ever known, and even those you've never met. Separation was never real. It only felt real because your human eyes could only see edges, not energy. Now, there are no edges. You don't see people as bodies anymore. You feel them as frequencies, their intentions, their fears, their longings. These things reach you instantly, without words, without explanation. And what's more, you feel no need to shield yourself from their energy, because you're not absorbing it. You're recognizing it as your own. There is no other anymore. There is only we. The idea of duality, of this or that, good or evil, right or wrong, begins to feel like a child's game, necessary for learning, but ultimately not real. In this expanded awareness, there is no division. Light and shadow are not in conflict. They are complementary expressions of one unified source. Everything you once thought was in opposition is now revealed as two sides of the same cosmic current. And you, once positioned in the middle, now realize you were never caught between them. You were holding both the entire time. This is not an abstract concept. This is embodiment. You are the mother and the murderer, the saint and the sinner, the victim and the villain. You see how you have played every role, not in this one life, but across lifetimes, across dimensions, across the infinite dream of the soul. And in this seeing, there is no shame, only wisdom. You begin to understand that judgment was always a form of forgetting, that condemnation was never about others, but about the parts of yourself you had yet to accept. Here, in the absence of duality, love becomes something entirely different. It's no longer about liking or disliking, deserving or earning. Love is simply the natural vibration of unity. It needs no reason, it flows without resistance. You don't choose to love others here, you can't not love them, because to love them is to love yourself. And this love doesn't require understanding or agreement, it just is. It permeates everything. Even what once seemed ugly or cruel now appears through the lens of compassion, because you see the roots beneath the behavior, the wounds behind the anger, the fear behind the control. And you understand, deeply, that everyone is always doing the best they can from their level of awareness. You begin to weep, not out of sorrow, but from the release of centuries of false separation. You realize that every judgment you held, every time you pushed someone away, every moment you believed you were unloved or unworthy, all of it stemmed from the illusion that you were alone. And now, that illusion has crumbled. In its place stands a truth so profound, so quiet, that it reshapes you at your core. You were never alone. You were always held in a field of connection so vast, so intricate, so sacred, that not one thought, not one heartbeat, not one silent prayer was ever lost. The souls who once appeared distant, unavailable, or even hostile, now appear as collaborators in your awakening. You see them differently now, not as antagonists in your story, but as teachers, volunteers who helped you grow. Some held you, some hurt you, but all of them helped reveal more of who you truly are. And with that clarity, the need to carry blame disappears. The need to carry guilt fades. You no longer seek justice. You seek integration, not to erase what happened, but to honor the roles each soul played in your unfolding. You begin to notice something else, something subtle but unmistakable. The more you accept others as yourself, the more your light expands. The more you surrender judgment, the more you reclaim pieces of your own soul. Forgiveness is no longer a process, it is a natural consequence of seeing clearly. And love becomes effortless. It's not a choice. It's the default setting of your eternal being. In this realm, you can no longer hide behind titles or achievements. There are no masks here, only resonance, only energy. You feel the purity of others, not based on what they've done, but on how deeply they've remembered themselves. And this inspires you, not to compare, but to become more fully what you already are. The soul is not competing, it is expanding. It is evolving through unity, not separation. There are no winners or losers here, no rankings, no rewards, just awareness, just love, just truth. The truth that you are not a drop in the ocean, you are the ocean in a drop. And everyone you've ever known is swimming in that same divine current, right alongside you. Now you understand why connection mattered so much, why kindness rippled farther than you ever realized, why every act of compassion, no matter how small, reverberated through dimensions you couldn't see. Because it was never just about you, it was always about us. And us includes everything, every soul, every star, every sacred moment across all lifetimes, forever bound in the dance of remembering. Once your soul has crossed the threshold, once you've shed the density of the body and remembered the essence of who you truly are, the journey doesn't end, it begins to deepen. The life you lived, the body you inhabited, the experiences that shaped you, they were all necessary, but they were just the first act. Now, unburdened by form and fear, you begin to feel yourself being pulled gently, not by force, but by frequency. It isn't a command or an order, it's a response. A natural alignment, like a drop of water returning to its river, or a note harmonizing with its scale. Your soul begins to move, not in space as you once understood it, but through layers of energy. You gravitate, effortlessly, toward the dimension that matches the vibration of your being. This movement is governed not by judgment, but by resonance. You go where you belong, not because someone decides your worth, but because your energy sings in a certain key, and the universe responds to it with perfect precision. Here, the law of resonance reveals itself as the great organizer. You cannot fake your way into a higher realm. You cannot cling to illusions or identities that don't vibrate in alignment. You are pulled not by desire, but by truth, and your truth is radiant. As you begin to rise, you feel the layers around you shift. Realms of spirit, once hidden behind the veil of human perception, now unfold, like chapters in a sacred book you forgot you were writing. Each realm holds its own atmosphere, its own frequency. Some feel soft and dreamlike, where the very air seems woven from thought and memory. Others pulse with brilliance so vibrant that you understand, without question, why your earthly eyes could not have perceived them. There is no ceiling here, only expansion, no borders, only vibration. You may notice that you are not alone. In fact, the further you travel into these layers of spiritual consciousness, the more aware you become of the beings who have always been near you. They were present while you walked the earth, just beyond your senses, guiding, whispering, protecting. But now, without the limitations of flesh, you see them, and you remember them. These are your guides, luminous, ageless presences who have walked with your soul through countless lifetimes. They do not carry names, but they carry energies you instantly recognize. Some feel like the quiet wisdom of a mentor, others like the fierce love of a protector, still others like the tender recognition of an ancient friend. Their communication with you is unlike anything experienced on earth. There are no words, yet entire understandings are transferred in an instant. One glance from these beings floods your awareness with remembrance. They do not instruct with authority, they teach through resonance. They do not lead with hierarchy, they guide through harmony. In their presence, you feel no intimidation, only elevation. They do not remind you of how small you are, but how vast you have always been. These guides are not limited to humanoid form. Some appear as radiant fields of light, others as sacred geometry that pulses with intelligence. Still others take forms your soul resonates with, archetypes from myths, symbols from your dreams, impressions you once dismissed as imagination. You begin to see that all these images held truth, that the spiritual world speaks through symbols because symbols transcend language. In these higher realms, understanding does not flow from the outside in, but from the inside out. As you move deeper, you may encounter beings even more vast, archetypal forces that are less like personalities and more like living principles. They are not entities in the way you once defined them. They are the very blueprints of divine order, embodiments of grace, compassion, truth, and balance. They are the pure energies from which mythologies on earth were born. Not figments of fantasy, but luminous truths, dressed in the stories that ancient minds could comprehend. And now, as you stand in their presence, you don't worship them, you commune with them, because you are made of the same light. These archetypal intelligences reflect back to you the aspects of your own divinity. They don't offer information for the sake of curiosity, they mirror your soul's potential. If you are ready to embody greater peace, they show you what peace feels like at its highest frequency. If you are seeking wisdom, they reveal the part of you that has always known. Their presence doesn't inflate your ego, it dissolves it. Not by diminishing you, but by awakening the deeper self that was buried beneath the need to be someone. In these realms, time takes on a different texture. Moments stretch into eternities, and eternities collapse into single pulses of awareness. You are not bound by chronology. You do not need to travel to arrive. You think, you feel, you resonate, and instantly, you are where you belong. You begin to understand how much of your earthly experience was a kind of slowed-down simulation designed to help you focus. But here, focus is not narrowed by time. It is expanded by consciousness. And yet, even as you rise into these realms of higher light, you are not detached from the world you left behind. You feel no need to escape it, no superiority over those still embodied. Instead, you feel deeper connection, because you now understand the purpose behind the struggle, the bravery behind the forgetting, the courage it takes to be human. You see the earth not as lesser, but as sacred, not as a prison, but as a school. and you feel an even greater love for those who are still walking through their initiations there. You want to help them, not because they are broken, but because they are becoming, just like you did. In some higher dimensions, you may even glimpse the soul groups you've traveled with across lifetimes. These are not just people you knew in this life, they are beings with whom your soul has danced through ages. You feel the harmony of those connections. Not all of them were easy, some were your greatest challenges, but from this perspective, you see that even the pain had purpose. Even the conflict had code. You begin to understand how deeply orchestrated your life was, not controlled, but coordinated. Your soul chose lessons, themes, and companions, all to help you remember your light. Eventually, your movement through these realms becomes less about exploration and more about alignment. You are no longer a visitor. You are a resident of light, returning home to the vibration that mirrors your soul's maturity. This place does not reward belief systems or religious labels. It responds only to energy. You do not enter because of your rituals, but because of your readiness. And when you arrive, it feels like exhaling after holding your breath for centuries. This is not the end. It is a resting place, a sanctuary for reflection, renewal, and revelation. From here, some souls choose to continue their journey in higher forms of service, becoming guides themselves, or preparing for deeper exploration into divine mysteries. Others may choose to return to earth, not out of punishment, but from purpose. The soul, after all, is endlessly curious, and growth, even for the most radiant spirit, is infinite. The higher realms are not up in the sky, they are within the heart of consciousness itself. And now that your soul is unbound, you begin to see that you never had to wait until death to access this truth. It was always there, within meditation, within silence, within love, within the deepest parts of your being. You now remember what the world made you forget. That you are not on the journey, you are the journey. And the destination is simply the next level of your own unfolding light. What if I told you that one of the most profound awakenings your soul experiences after death isn't about discovering something new, but about gently releasing what you thought defined you? That the path forward into light, truth, and expansion begins not with acquiring more, but with letting go. The echo of earth doesn't vanish the moment you leave your body, it lingers. Like the trailing sound of a bell after it's been rung, the resonance of your life continues to hum around you. And for a time, you are held within it, not trapped, but still tethered by the energies of what you've carried. And this is where the next sacred journey begins, not through space, but through surrender. You find that your memories, emotions, and attachments do not disappear the moment you cross over. They meet you here, just as vividly as they lived within you during your time on earth. You see the moments you cherished, the laughter, the love, the touch of someone's hand, the scent of places you called home. But you also feel the weight of unfinished stories, the apologies left unsaid, the pain you caused or endured, the roles you played so long that they became masks even to your soul. These pieces of your human life are not burdens in themselves, but they carry energy, and in the afterlife, energy speaks louder than words. At first, it's tempting to hold on to those familiar energies, the identity you built, the name that followed you through time, the roles you fulfilled, a mother, a father, a partner, a seeker, a rebel. They still echo through your awareness like beloved characters from a story you aren't quite ready to close. But now, something begins to stir deep within your being. A quiet urging, not a command, not a force, just a knowing, a whisper that says, you are more than any of these roles. You are more than what happened to you. You are more than what you gained or lost. You are not here to forget, but to transcend. And so, the process begins. It doesn't feel like effort. It feels like unwrapping, like layers of clothing falling gently to the floor. You don't resist it. You begin to allow it. The soul doesn't discard the past. It integrates it. It doesn't deny what it lived through. It simply stops needing to define itself by it. The wounds are not erased. They are held in love so complete that their edges soften, their heat cools, and what remains is understanding. You stop blaming others. you stop blaming yourself. You stop trying to rewrite what can't be changed. And in that moment of surrender, you begin to feel something extraordinary. Freedom. True freedom, you discover, doesn't come from grasping or fixing, it comes from release, from acceptance so deep that nothing needs to be different anymore. You begin to understand why some souls feel stuck, why they linger near the earthly plane, unable to move on. It isn't because they are trapped by external forces, it's because they are still holding tightly to people, to guilt, to identities that once gave them purpose. And the tragedy is not in the pain, but in the forgetting that they no longer need to carry it. Emotional ties don't dissolve simply because you've crossed over. Love still exists, bonds still remain, but what begins to shift is the nature of those connections. Where once there was clinging, now there is presence. Where once there was need, now there is reverence. You realize that attachment was never about love, it was about fear, fear of loss, fear of absence, fear of not being whole without someone or something outside yourself. But now you see that real love doesn't bind, it expands, it allows, it doesn't beg to stay, it blesses your becoming. You begin to revisit moments from your life, times when you were hurt, misunderstood, or rejected. But instead of being pulled into the emotions, you are lifted above them. Not to detach from your humanity, but to see it more clearly. You see why you reacted the way you did. You see what your younger self didn't yet know. And more importantly, you see the hearts of others. Their fears, their wounds, their own blind spots. And this view, from a higher vantage, softens everything. Forgiveness doesn't need to be forced, it simply rises, like mist from water warmed by the morning sun. It happens naturally when you no longer feel the need to hold anything against anyone, including yourself. You may feel drawn back toward people you loved deeply, souls who remain on earth, continuing their own journeys. You visit them, not always in ways they can perceive, but in presence, in subtle whispers of comfort, in dreams, in moments of sudden stillness when they feel you and don't know why. But here is where the soul learns its most delicate lesson. Love them, but let them go. They have their own path to walk, and it is not yours to direct. You are still connected, yes, but now your connection is made of light, not control, of grace, not attachment. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. You will never forget. The soul remembers everything that shaped it, but it remembers from a place of peace, not pain. The memories don't vanish, they transform. The ache becomes reverence. The loss becomes gratitude. The identity you once held so tightly becomes a story you carry in your heart, but not on your shoulders. You are no longer confined to one name, one life, one version of self. You are becoming something greater, something more whole, more luminous, more aligned with the timeless truth of what you are. And in this sacred unbinding, something miraculous occurs. You begin to sense your soul expanding, not in space, but in presence. Like a flame no longer sheltered by a lantern, your light spreads in all directions. The more you release, the more you rise. Not higher, but deeper, deeper into truth, deeper into clarity, deeper into the heart of the universe itself. There is no push, no force, just the gentle current of surrender carrying you into more of yourself. The soul does not release attachment to escape life, it releases to embrace it more fully. You now see that clinging was never love, that guilt was never growth, that identity was never essence. And as you allow these things to fall away, you become lighter, not empty, but pure. There is a spaciousness within you that wasn't there before, a silence that speaks louder than thought, a peace that needs no reason. You are not abandoning your life, you are honoring it by stepping into the truth beyond it. And when that final thread of attachment loosens, you don't feel loss, you feel wholeness, as if everything you ever longed for is already within you. You are not reaching anymore, you are remembering. And in that remembering, you discover a joy so quiet, so steady, that it feels eternal. It is not the joy of a moment, it is the joy of being. There comes a moment, after the light has embraced you, after the soul has remembered its origin and the layers of illusion have fallen away, when a choice begins to emerge. Not imposed, not demanded, but presented with the reverence of the divine. It isn't a test, it isn't a command, it's a gentle invitation from the heart of consciousness itself. You feel it not as a question spoken in words, but as a ripple in your essence, a wave of awareness that begins to rise within you and ask, "What now?" In this space beyond form, after the life review and reunion with spirit, you realize something sacred. Your journey is not over. In fact, in many ways, it is only now truly beginning. For some, this is the time when the option to return to the physical world is gently offered, not as a punishment, not as a burden, but as a continuation, a mission, a deeper dive into love, into healing, into service. And for others, the path ahead leads not back into the density of earth, but further into the vast reaches of higher learning, dimensions where energy moves at the speed of thought and creation itself is the classroom. But no matter what is placed before you, one truth stands above all. You are not forced. Free will is never stripped away. It is honored here in ways unimaginable to the human mind. Even in this space where time dissolves and truth illuminates every corner of your being, you are still the author of your path. You choose. Not from ego, not from fear, but from the deepest alignment of your soul. The choice doesn't come from pressure, it comes from clarity, and that clarity is profound. If your soul feels that there is more to experience, more to express, more love to embody on earth, you may feel a draw toward returning. This draw isn't born from guilt or attachment, but from a sense of purpose, a knowing that there is still something sacred to complete. Maybe it's a soul contract that was left unfinished. Maybe it's a chance to return with more awareness, more grace, or maybe it's simply the desire to be a light in the darkness for someone who will one day need you. You see it all clearly now. You don't return to escape, you return to serve. But returning is no small thing. You understand what it entails. You know that the veil of forgetfulness will descend again, that the weight of time and the challenge of duality will return. You won't remember everything, at least not consciously. The body will once again feel hunger, the mind will once again be tested by doubt. But with this awareness comes something new, an anchoring of truth so deep that even the forgetting won't erase it completely. You return not just as a human soul, but as a carrier of remembrance. And yet, for many, the choice is not to go back, but to continue forward, to step into the next level of soul evolution in the realms beyond. These souls are not fleeing Earth. They have simply completed what they came to learn there. Their energy no longer aligns with the limitations of physical matter. Instead, they gravitate toward dimensions where the soul continues its expansion through service, wisdom, and co-creation. Here, learning doesn't stop, it transforms. The soul continues to evolve, not through survival or struggle, but through embodiment of divine principles. Some souls begin training to become guides, to assist others walking through the earthly realm. These are the whispers you felt in your moments of crisis or grace, the unseen presence guiding you when you thought no one was there. These guides were once like you, once human, once afraid, once broken and healing and longing for more. Now they walk alongside those still on earth, offering nudges, comfort, insight, not by intervening directly, but by holding light strong enough that it can be sensed through the veil. Becoming a guide is not about hierarchy, it is about readiness, about resonance, about the willingness to hold space without needing recognition. Others move toward realms where creation itself becomes the teacher. These are spaces where the soul learns how to shape energy with pure intention, where sound and light become tools of growth, where entire landscapes are formed from thought, where love is not spoken but sung into existence. You may find yourself drawn to these realms if your soul has long felt like an artist, a visionary, a builder of new worlds. Here, you remember that creation is not confined to physical form. It is an eternal expression of divine will through you. Still others enter councils of wisdom, where great beings gather not to rule, but to harmonize. These councils hold the memory of civilizations long past and those yet to be born. They oversee the evolution of consciousness across galaxies. To join them is not a reward, it is a calling. one that requires not knowledge in the traditional sense, but the maturity of the soul, the ability to hold paradox, to see without judgment, to love without condition. You are not assigned here. You are welcomed when your resonance matches the frequency of truth held in these sacred halls. No matter what path unfolds before you, the sense of freedom is overwhelming. For the first time, you feel what it means to be truly sovereign. You are not defined by your past, not limited by your former choices. You are not bound by karma in the way you once feared. Karma, here, is not punishment. It is simply resonance. What you are ready for, you receive. What you have outgrown, you release. The universe is not keeping score. It is responding to your vibration with perfect precision. And in this realization, your consciousness begins to expand even further. You no longer identify with just the lifetime you lived. You begin to sense the tapestry of your soul, threads of lifetimes, patterns of learning, moments of awakening scattered across dimensions. You see yourself not as a single character in a single story, but as an ever-unfolding being of light moving through countless experiences, each one sacred, each one essential. The smallness of identity dissolves, and in its place rises the vastness of truth. You are consciousness itself, choosing to know itself in infinite ways. Your journey does not require an ending. There is no final destination. There are only deeper layers of love, more refined expressions of truth, higher harmonics of being. Whether you return to earth or continue into the inner realms of spirit, the journey remains sacred. You do not lose yourself, you expand into more of yourself. You do not escape the world, you rise into a greater ability to serve it, from whatever dimension you choose to inhabit. And so you stand in this vastness, aware of your freedom, supported by love, guided by wisdom beyond comprehension. There is no fear, no pressure, only choice, only invitation. Only the deep knowing that wherever you go next, it will be aligned with your soul's highest unfolding. The journey continues. The light calls, and your essence, eternal and awake, answers without hesitation. What if I told you that your life, every chapter, every triumph, every ache, wasn't random? That even the moments you questioned the most, the ones you wished you could undo, were threads in a masterfully woven design your soul chose long before you took your first breath. Now, in this space beyond form and fear, you begin to see with a clarity unavailable in the density of the physical world. You see not just what happened in your life, but why, and this shift in perception changes everything. You remember now, not just memories of people and events, but the intention behind your incarnation. You feel the echo of the choice, how you, as a soul of infinite wisdom and light, stood in the presence of divine intelligence and said, yes, yes, I will go, yes, I will learn, yes, I will walk through the veil and forget, because the forgetting will lead to growth, and the growth will lead to remembering. And in that remembering, I will become something more. Not more worthy, but more aware. Not more divine, but more expressed. You begin to recall the blueprint, not in rigid detail, but in waves of resonance. The family you chose, the body you inhabited, the experiences you magnetized to yourself, they weren't accidents. They were agreements, they were assignments, they were invitations to evolve. This realization does not bring regret, it brings awe, because now you understand how courageous you were. To descend into a realm of contrast and limitation, to forget your origin, to willingly enter a space where pain and confusion could exist, this was not a fall from grace, it was a leap into it. Not to be punished or tested, but to experience, to expand, to remember what could only be remembered through the journey of forgetting. As you look back over the life you just left, you begin to see the themes that ran through it like hidden rivers, the repeating patterns, the emotional wounds that kept resurfacing, the relationships that brought both joy and friction. These weren't failures or random chaos. They were soul contracts, agreements made between beings of light before incarnating. Some contracts were forged in love, others in challenge, but all were made for the sake of awakening. And now, with expanded vision, you can feel the sacredness of each one. That person who hurt you deeply? You see now how they agreed to play that part, not out of cruelty, but to catalyze your healing. That unexpected loss you grieved so heavily, you understand how it broke open a part of your heart that had long been closed, that dream that never came to pass. You see how it redirected you towards something your soul truly needed. The delays, the betrayals, the detours, they weren't diversions, they were designs, crafted with divine precision to bring you home to yourself. You begin to grasp that your life wasn't just about accomplishing things or checking boxes. It was about embodying states of consciousness. It was about learning compassion, not as a theory, but as a lived experience. About moving through fear so you could taste courage. About holding grief so you could understand love's depth. About navigating darkness, not to be consumed by it, but to become a light within it. Every moment you resisted, every time you fell and rose again, every tear you cried when no one else could see, it all mattered, it all counted. And it all shaped your soul in ways you are only beginning to comprehend. There is no scoreboard here, no tally of wins and losses, no being sitting in judgment, analyzing whether you succeeded. What you find instead is a soft, enveloping presence that reveals your life through the lens of growth. You didn't come to Earth to be perfect. You came to be real. You came to stretch and stumble and rise, and in doing so, you brought more light into form. You anchored more love into a world that desperately needed it, not by preaching or performing, but by simply being, by living your truth as best as you could, with the tools and awareness you had at each step. This realization brings a peace that transcends understanding, because now, you know, nothing was wasted, not the time you thought you lost, not the love that went unreciprocated, not the pain you carried in silence. Even the moments you wanted to erase served something. They deepened you, they refined you, they brought you face to face with the parts of yourself still waiting to be seen, and by seeing them, by feeling them, you set yourself free. You begin to see your soul's evolution not just in terms of this one lifetime, but as a continuum, a fluid, expansive journey through countless expressions. Some lives were brief, some were long, some were peaceful, others filled with challenge. But all were sacred. All added threads to the tapestry of who you are becoming. You see how certain lessons have followed you through time, not as punishment, but as invitations to mastery. Perhaps patience was a recurring theme, or courage, or surrender, and now you see how every lifetime offered you a new way to meet that theme with more grace, more presence, more awareness. You are not a random fragment of consciousness floating through chaos. You are a soul on purpose. And that purpose is not static, it is dynamic, it evolves as you evolve. The questions you carried in life, why am I here? What's the point of all this? Are now answered, not with facts, but with knowing. You were here to feel, to grow, to remember, to radiate. Not because you had something to prove, but because your soul was ready for the experience. Ready to become a living, breathing expression of love in a world that forgets so easily. And now, having completed that chapter, you feel no urgency to rush into the next. There is only stillness, reverence. You are given space to reflect, to integrate, to rest. Not because your journey is over, but because the cycle is complete. One life closed with all its complexity, and you are honored for having lived it. Not for doing it right, but for showing up with courage and soul, for daring to feel it all, for allowing yourself to be shaped by the fires of life without letting them consume your light. And even as you let go, even as you rise into new realms of awareness, you carry something with you, not regret, not sorrow, but gratitude, because you remember now why you went, why you left, and why, when the time comes, you might choose to go again, not to escape the light, but to bring it, not to forget again, but to remember more deeply, and in that remembering, to awaken the world, one heartbeat at a time. It is here, in the stillness that follows everything, that you begin to understand what death truly is. Not an ending, not a closing chapter, but a threshold. a doorway that leads you not into darkness, but into light, so complete that every question you've ever held begins to dissolve into clarity. The notion that life is a brief flame, snuffed out by death, fades like smoke. You realize now that the flame was never extinguished, it simply changed rooms. It expanded beyond the limits of the vessel that once held it. And in that expansion, everything you once feared about death becomes irrelevant. Your consciousness, no longer bound by the ticking of clocks or the weight of calendars, flows freely through eternity. There is no more before and after, no more deadlines, no more aging, no more urgency. You are not hurrying toward anything, nor are you being pulled back by regret. You simply are. Present. Awake. Infinite. Time reveals itself to be an illusion you once agreed to inhabit, for the sake of learning, growing, and remembering. But now, outside of it, you are limitless. You can sense the full spectrum of your soul's journey, not as a line, but as a living field, lifetimes blooming like stars across the vast sky of your awareness. And the most astonishing part? You are no longer afraid. There is no fear here, none. It has been replaced completely by a love so vast, so intelligent, and so alive that it wraps around you and through you like light bathing water. This love is not merely an emotion, it is the structure of all things. It is the fabric that holds creation itself together. It is not dependent on behavior, on belief, or on perfection. It does not judge or measure, it simply is, and you, in your truest form, are made of it. There is nothing you have to do to earn it. There never was. You only had to remember. In this place of eternal awareness, you no longer question your worth. You see now that every doubt you carried was never yours to begin with. They were illusions born of a world that taught you to forget your own light. Here, the light is unmistakable. It surrounds you. It is you. And as you dwell in this remembering, you begin to laugh, not out of mockery, but out of wonder. Wonder that you ever believed yourself to be small. Wonder that you ever thought your life was meaningless or accidental. Wonder that you, who are made of stars and wisdom and divine code, ever doubted your place in the universe. What you see now is that life and death are not opposites. They are partners. They are sacred mirrors reflecting different aspects of the same eternal truth. Life teaches you how to love within limits. Death teaches you how to love without them. Life teaches you how to trust through the fog. Death clears the fog and shows you the landscape. Life calls you to courage in the unknown. Death returns you to knowing. And in that knowing, there is peace. Not the quiet of silence, but the serenity of full awareness. Peace, because there is nothing left to prove, nothing left to defend, nothing left to fear. You are surrounded by others who have awakened into this space. Souls of every age, from every culture, every corner of the cosmos. There are no divisions here, no hierarchies, no tribes. Only energy, only resonance, only unity. You recognize many of them, not always by name, but by vibration. Souls you once loved, souls who once challenged you, souls you've never met, yet have always known. There is no separation here, no barriers. You move toward one another not with bodies, but with intention, with light, with song. In this field of unity, you begin to understand that the self you identified with in your last life was just one layer, not false, but incomplete. A single note in a symphony that stretches far beyond what your human mind could hold. That identity mattered, it shaped you, it carved wisdom into your soul, but it was never the whole of you. Now, with full awareness, you remember the many names you've worn, the many forms you've taken. Each one served its purpose. Each one taught you something sacred. But now, they fall away like leaves in the wind, and what remains is essence. This essence, your true self, has no boundaries. It is not male or female, not old or young, not defined by race or creed or title. It is light in its purest form. It is love in its highest frequency. It is awareness that stretches endlessly in all directions. You are not just a soul. You are soulness. You are a current of the divine, flowing through creation with perfect purpose. And this realization doesn't make you feel distant from the human experience. It brings you closer to it. You see now, with unshakable clarity, how sacred it is to be human. You feel an overwhelming reverence for the courage it took to live, to feel pain, to risk loss, to walk blind into mystery, to love knowing you might lose. From here, you see that every tear was sacred. Every joy, every heartbreak, every fear, every triumph, it was all part of your soul's expansion. None of it was wasted, not one moment. And as you hold that realization, you feel something else. Gratitude. Deep, aching gratitude. Not just for the life you lived, but for the soul you are. For the journey you've taken across lifetimes. For the truth that has never left you, even when you forgot it. This is the beginning. Not of something new, but of something eternal. A new octave of awareness, a new depth of knowing. There are realms you've yet to explore, lessons you've yet to embody, souls you've yet to encounter and love. You are not done. The journey continues, not out of lack, but out of abundance. Not because you must, but because you can. Because consciousness, in its purest form, is movement, is creation, is evolution. From this space, you may choose to rest, or to return, or to rise into even higher realms of light and wisdom. There is no pressure, only potential. You are held in love, surrounded by intelligence far beyond what the human mind could grasp. And you are trusted completely. Trusted to choose, trusted to grow, trusted to shine. And through it all, the deepest truth of your being echoes in the stillness. You are eternal, you are infinite, you are divine. Not someday, not if you earn it, now, and forever.